Welcome back, everybody. We move into one of my favorite time periods, Chapter 9, the High Middle Ages. As the book notes, Europe experienced a slight rise in temperature during the Middle Ages, and this allowed for the increase of agriculture. Along with the development of new technologies, the European culture was allowed to cultivate the land more expeditiously and thus increase population. Some of these new technologies include the remade horse collar, which went around the horse's shoulder instead of in his mouth, and then also horseshoes, which allowed the horse to actually be able to walk longer and walk more comfortably. And so the fields were able to be plowed more efficiently. Other technologies include the increased use of the windmill and the water mill. Now, both of these technologies existed for a long time in Europe and in the Middle East, but they really became into rapid and greater use during this time period. A revolutionary technique also came about with the use of the three-field system. The three-field system basically involved separating a farm into three parts. On two of the parts, you would plant your crops and you'd let them grow, while the third part, you would let lay fallow, as they called, or you wouldn't plant anything, essentially. That would allow that third part of the field to regain nutrients over the year. Now, when the next planting cycle came around, the farmers would then alternate, and they would use that third one and then let one of the other parts lay fallow, and then that other part would start to regain nutrients. Farmers realized that this is a way to keep fields fresher for longer and allow them to continue for more extensive growing periods. They would also, of course, rotate the sort of crops, because some crops use different nutrients than others would, so they wouldn't always plant the same crop on the same piece of land because it would suck up all the essential nutrients that it needed. But let's talk about the people. The peasants, those on the lower echelon of society, formed the largest amount of people in medieval Europe. Now, the peasant's day was usually filled with farming and taking care of field work and the livestock, and all the other job duties that go around with that. Repairing tools for in the women's lives, working on weaving materials, and also working out in the fields, taking care of the children, and a whole host of other daily activities. A lot of it mundane, to be exact, but that was the life of the peasant. You wake up, you go work in the field, and you would come home at night and you go to sleep. Now, it wasn't all dreary, putting it that way. There was some respite. The Catholic Church actually, during this time, established, I think, up to about 50 religious holidays. These include holidays such as Christmas, Pentecost, Easter. Now, during these holidays, they would usually have feast days, where the peasants would put together meager feasts, and they would also go to their local church with their friends and family and hear about church sermons. And usually they had these days off from working. Now, the work they did was not only just for themselves to plant their own crops and things like that, but it was also to work on their lord's fields, the guy who saw over them. So the peasants would work on not only their stuff, but on the property of the lord as well. So let's talk about these lords. The aristocracy, or those on the top echelon of society, are the ones who yielded the most control over the land and also wielded the most political power, the lords and ladies. Now, some of these lords and ladies actually rose to become even more powerful, and they would get titles such as counts or countesses, dukes or duchesses, or kings and queens. Now, these rulers of society would basically set the rules and look over people. Now, the lords depended upon knights to help serve their military needs. And as a rise in between local strife in between these lords, you would have the rise of more and more knights popping up. And so in these next several videos, we're going to see about information about how to become a knight, and then some of the activities that knights would get into. But with the rise of knights and with all of this local fighting, and also don't forget incursions from Vikings and incursions from Muslims from the south, you had a rise in castle building. So the aristocracy, one of their main imprints that you can still see around Europe a lot today, is the rise of the castle itself during this time period. So let's move on next, see a little bit about knights, and then I'll be back more to talk about 3 specific individuals during this time period.